Hey there, I'm Kevin Downey, and I run a boutique agency called Kevin M. Downey, where we help B2B companies with their sales and marketing efforts. You can visit our website at kevinmdowney.com. So today's video, unconventional for me because I'm usually dealing with, business to business companies and lead generation, business development strategy, sales strategy and process and all that kind of stuff. But obviously, as an agency, we've been doing recruiting for 10 years. My staff has been handling all the recruiting work for the past probably 4 or 5 years in our agency's history. But they do tie together. And I wanted to do a video to try to help job seekers because I've seen and hearing from my staff the volume of candidates that they're getting for every single position, especially if it's remote. I'm hearing just massive volumes of candidates coming in. A lot of pressure on people, it seems, to make more money, to find a job, increase their salary. Companies, obviously, especially if you're wanting to work remotely, have more leverage these days, right? Because there is such a high supply of candidates looking for remote work relative to the overall supply of candidates relative to the demand from companies, right? So they have their pick of the lot, right? And not only, especially if it's a remote position, not only can they recruit the whole United States, so they're going to get inundated with hundreds, thousands of candidates, but they can now recruit internationally, right? Because one of the things that gets forgotten in this day and age is that if the job can be done remotely in the United States, it can be done remotely from anywhere with an internet connection. So one of the challenges for Americans and American job seekers and employees is the fact that if your job can be done remotely, and yes, you want to work remotely, right? And you want that flexibility and the ease of use of everything that comes with that. You also have to contend with the fact that not only is the whole United States competing with you for that job or those jobs, but now the international community can do so, and they can work a lot cheaper in most cases, as our cost of living index in the United States, depending on the data you believe, is somewhere between the 5th and 20th percentile. So what is the solution to the problem of, as a job seeker and the process that you're used to, which you're seeking a single job, working for one company as an employee, getting a W-2 employment deal and a same check every week or whatever, and your only way of going about finding those roles or those jobs is going through job boards, and you apply and you apply and you apply, and you have to wait for someone to respond to you or to come to you. So as an entrepreneur, my thought process is, and obviously doing a ton of marketing, is that job seekers need to turn this whole thing on its head. Job seekers in the United States, especially if you can work remotely, you really have to think in a different way. And so rather than try to secure employment and do a job, think about what problem or pain point you solve for a company and how much time it takes to solve that for that company. And sometimes that means full time. But there are a lot of times that jobs can be done fractionally. For example, what I do or my agency does, if you just take me as an expert and what I could do by myself with a certain number of hours in a day, and 8 hours in a day, 40 hours a week, with my expertise, I could go, let's say I'm going to throw you a number based upon my expertise, which is fairly involved on the email side, right? Because there's a number of moving parts there and it's hard to do well. A lot of people understand one piece of it, but not very many people understand how to utilize it and put all the pieces together. So I'm in a little bit of a unique skill set, right? And you might be too, but it doesn't matter. Whatever pain point or problem you solve, you have to identify that. What problem or pain point you can solve. So the pain point I can solve is I can build a B2B cold outreach strategy with email and build out a process for a business development team, sales team to drive inbound leads to them and then move prospects through a process to schedule calls with sales and then ultimately present to them, right? And get them a proposal, quote, whatever. So let's say as a salaried employee, I'd be worth $175,000 a year to do that for a mid-market or enterprise company that has a field of sales reps, right? But the reality is that I could do it cheaper for that company by spending less time for that company on that role. And the more companies that I can work for, so we're going to go in this gradation from working for one company as an employee to the philosophy and mindset of being a freelance independent contractor working for multiple employers to then almost like owning your own business, right? But the thought is still the same, right? I solve a problem for a company. You as an employee solve a problem for a company. Every employee in a for-profit company either makes or saves the company money. Doesn't matter what your job is. You either make or save the company money. If you don't do one of those two things, there's no job. So you do obviously solve a problem. You solve a pain point. If you can solve that pain point, especially if there's a niche or a little bit of a segment of what you can do, that you can do in 2 hours a day or 4 hours a day for an employer, why not think about going to work for multiple employers as a freelance independent contractor and get paid a lot more? Because they're not committed to you. They don't have to worry about health insurance. They don't have to worry about the legalities if they cut you loose. You work as a freelance independent contractor. And now you can increase your pay scale. So let's say I'm worth, and again, I'm throwing the number out there, right? I'm going to do this in real time with a calculator. So let's say I'm worth $175 a year to a company as a dedicated employee. But what I do for them, I theoretically could do, and this is true with what I do, unless they have a massive sales force and have a lot of email boxes running, I could do it for more than one company without a problem. So let's say I was going to go do this I could do it for 4 companies. Could I take my 175 and double my pay and do it for 4 companies? Absolutely, because now I'm going to be half the cost to them that I might have been otherwise, and I'm still achieving that same goal. So if I take that 175 and I multiply that by 2, I get 350,000. Now I do that for 4 companies, and I ask them to pay me $87,500 a year as an independent contractor. Now I can double my salary, right? When we talk about 1.5 times, how could you make 50% more than you're currently making? Go work for 3 companies, right? Do the same thing for them and work for all 3 companies part-time. That is how you're going to increase your pay scale, right? So you got to think, in order to achieve what you're trying to achieve as an American job seeker, especially again, if it is a job that can be done remotely and assuming they don't have to have you full-time, right? Because yes, we all want that full-time, most everyone wants that full-time W-2 employment and that guaranteed paycheck and that security blanket that comes with that. But the problem is that companies are starting to not want to do that as much. They're not wanting to, and they don't necessarily need to hire you full-time for certain roles. So I'm not saying every role. I'm not saying this is across the board for every job. Obviously, there are plenty of jobs that need to be and are going to be full-time and W-2 employment, and you're going to get that guaranteed paycheck and it's done, right? And that's it. But if you're trying to make more money, and based upon our applicant counts and what I hear coming from interviews, job seekers are under pressure in the United States. They're needing to make more money. If you need to make more money, forget about the W-2 employment and the security blanket of one employer and start thinking about multiple employers. And being a freelance independent contractor and going to work for them on a fractional basis, if you haven't heard that term, fractional employment, right? So the more employers that you work for, now you're starting to get into running a business, right? But the more employers you work for, the more you can get from them per hour, relatively speaking. So let's say I want to triple my pay. So let's say I'm 175. I want to triple my pay. I'm at 5.25. Boy, that sounds like a lot, right? But I could do this for 8 companies, right? So for each company, I'm going to run your entire email marketing system, for example, and I only need $65,000 a year. Right? And I'm going to do that. I'm going to be able to manage all of your reps, assuming you don't have too many. But let's say you have 5, 10, 20 reps. I'm going to run their email marketing system for them. I'm going to set up the whole process, drive inbound leads, that whole thing. And I'm going to be very specialized at that for your company. And you don't even have to hire me as an employee. Just hire me as a fractional independent, independent contractor, freelance independent contractor. And I now can make more money. Now, does that mean I'm going to lose a gig now and then and I'm going to have to replace that gig? Absolutely. But the more employees you work for on a fractional basis, the less weight or importance is in each of those relationships and deals that you're running. So you have to really think about seeking your opportunities going forward that way and to make more money in the United States, because it is coming down the road, whether you're hearing about it or not yet. We are seeing more Americans move to Mexico for a lower cost of living, looking for remote work. They are now competing with you if you are in the United States for a lot of the same jobs that they can do for half the price because they live in Mexico. It's a much lower cost of living, right? And companies are willing to do that. Companies are now outsourcing to BPO firms, right? Outsourcing agencies, specialized outsource agencies to do certain tasks and certain work that is putting more leverage on everything and making harder for you to find that W-2 employment with the salary that you need relative to the cost of living in the United States, right? Okay, so now that you understand that concept and that process and that thought, now we have to think about a couple of things. Number one, what can you do for a company? What pain point can you solve? What specific thing can you do for them? So that's something you have to think about, because that's going to go to the way you maybe look at redesigning a resume, right? Or a brag sheet, if you will. I like to think of resumes as brag sheets. But now your outreach strategy to find those opportunities needs to be turned on its head, and it comes into what I specialize in. So instead of looking, and yes, job boards could be useful for this under the right circumstances, but at the end of the day, you can run cold outreach to companies, to certain titles within companies where you solve a pain point for them, and you can offer to say, hey, John, if you have this pain point, I can help you. I can do this for you on a part-time or fractional basis as an independent contractor. And I'll even let you hire me for a month at a time, for the first month, just for 30 days to see if you think I'm worth it. And you could put that out there as a cold outreach strategy with email to drive people to you, to then engage with you and hire you and engage you, again, not as an employee, but as an independent contractor, to then give you those opportunities. And it's not that hard to find. Like if you were going to do business development for a company, or if you were going to do a customer service role, or any kind of specialized role in IT or programming or whatever the case is, you can do these things. You can find a niche, a very area of specialization. It could be a research type role for the real estate industry, and you do this just for those agents, and you go and try to find brokers that you can work for on a fractional basis. And now you go find 8 that you can work for, and you can triple your pay. So you take whatever base you would expect to make, that you really would like to make, all right, that's realistic for the role that you're talking about full-time in the United States, realistic, and now you triple that number. Now divide that by 8 employers, or 8 clients, if you will, and now you've just tripled your pay. Is it hard to go find 8 people to pay you at one time, right? Yes, it is. It's a process. But the reality is that's part of how we are going to solve the problem in the United States of people not being able to make enough money in a single W-2 role for an employer, right? And the employers have the leverage. They have the checkbook. They have the need. You're the one that needs to get paid. So you have to adapt and stick and move relative to the market demands and the market needs. So anyway, that's a big picture. And if you want to know where to look for the data and how to do cold outreach, you can look at videos on our channel. Obviously, there are other people that have videos online on how to do email. If you have a Gmail address, you can do it through your Gmail. You set up on a CRM. You could use Apollo. You could maybe use ZoomInfo. You can find data on LinkedIn, Seamless AI, UpLead, Lead 411, I think, are some of the ones that I've come across. Our agency, all of our clients, we put everybody on Apollo. But you can go find the data, build a list, build a cold outreach system with an email to the right people, and send 200, 150, 200, 250 emails a day right through your Gmail or your Microsoft 365, for example, right? Or you can even get more complex than that if you're pretty adept at setting up, domains and DNS settings and all that stuff. Maybe you come from a marketing background or an IT background where you know these things, and you can get more complex than that. You can do higher volume than that, right? If you know all the things to do. But at the end of the day, that basic cold outreach strategy, that'll drive you a person that's interested every day or two, right? Then you send them your resume, and then you follow up with them by phone. You ask them, hey, I can help you. Give me 30 days. I'll prove it, right? That kind of strategy is the way you're going to go out and build a network of employers or jobs, contracts, if you will, and you can change your mindset from being that W-2 employee working for one company to being an independent contractor, a freelancer that works for multiple employers. And now you're a lot more attractive to them because you're less expensive, and you're still getting the same job done. And they have less commitment, they have less risk. They don't have to deal with the employment laws, all the things that employers want to get rid of, right? That we all want to avoid to some degree. That is how you are going to increase your compensation in the United States. in the grand scheme of things. And in some roles, it's not feasible. Some roles are going to be full-time. There's going to be certain pay commands, and that's all you're going to be able to get. And you know, there's other things that come into play and all that stuff, and it's a much long, deep conversation. But if you are one of those people that can do a job remotely, especially, and you are comfortable with, again, wanting to increase your total compensation, this is a strategy that I would certainly consider if I was a job seeker. Okay? All right. Hope that helps you out. You guys have a great day. And if you have any questions, reach out to me. Website is kevinmdowney.com, and we'll talk to you soon.